Welcome to Jersey Reads the Classics, an audiobook podcast delving into the finest works of our literary masters. Unfortunately, it's read by this woman.
What the hell? Who cares? Let's go on an adventure.
Hello, and welcome back to Jersey Reads the Classics with me, your host, Rosie D. Candia. So, I don't blather on, I don't do recaps here, that's on the podcast. So, we're going to continue with our book, Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, and we're going to go right into Chapter 2. Chapter 2, The Shadow. Mrs. Darling screamed, and as if in answer to a bell, the door opened, and Nana entered, returned from her evening out. She growled and sprang at the boy, who leapt lightly through the window. Again, Mrs. Darling screamed, this time in distress for him, for she thought he was killed, and she ran down into the street to look for his little body, but it was not there, and she looked up, and in the black night she could see nothing but what she thought was a shooting star. She returned to the nursery and found Nana with something in her mouth, which proved to be the boy's shadow. The boy's shadow? Okay. Is this what they call shadow work? Yes, we all have a shadow. And I'm not even talking about the literal one. We're talking about figuratively. I can't believe I can't even say it. My tongue is tied. It's okay. Anyway, his shadow has been stolen. This is interesting. We're going to touch on that in the woo-woo section, but we all got a shadow, if you know what I mean. What's hidden in your shadow? Okay. Makes you want to think. Okay. As he leapt at the window, Nana had closed it quickly, too late to catch him, but his shadow had not had time to get out. Slam went the window and snapped it off. You may be sure Mrs. Darling examined the shadow carefully, but it was quite the ordinary kind. Nana had no doubt of what was the best thing to do with this shadow. She hung it out at the window, meaning he is sure to come back for it. Let us put it where he can get it easily without disturbing the children. But unfortunately, Mrs. Darling could not leave it hanging out at the window. It looked so like the washing and lowered the whole tone of the house. Are you kidding me? Now she's worried about the Joneses too and the neighbors. Look at that. She doesn't want to hang his shadow out. First of all, I don't think anybody would see it in the middle of the night. But I would keep it too, because I'd want that little rat bastard to come back in and catch him. But anyway, let's go on. She thought of showing it to Mr. Darling. I wouldn't do that. But he was totting up winter greatcoats for John and Michael, with a wet towel around his head to keep his brain clear, and it seemed a shame to trouble him. Besides, she knew exactly what he would say. It all comes of having a dog for a nurse. She decided to roll the shadow up and put it away carefully in a drawer until a fitting opportunity came for telling her husband. Ah, me, is there ever going to be a right time to tell Mr. Darling, who's a very practical man, that they've caught the shadow of a little boy that flies in and out of a window? All of us is all I'm going to say. The opportunity came a week later on that never-to-be-forgotten Friday. Of course, it was a Friday. I ought to have been specially careful on a Friday, she used to say afterwards to her husband, while perhaps Nana was on the other side of her, holding her hands. No, Mr. Darling always said, I am responsible for it all. I, George Darling, did it. Mea culpa, mea culpa. He had had a classical education. Okay, first of all, Mr. Darling is stepping up to the plate and he's taking responsibility, because now obviously something has happened and we're going to find out what has happened. And mea culpa is, obviously everybody knows, my fault. All right, but he's had a classical education. Ha 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 ha. So hoity-toity. They sat thus night after night recalling that fatal Friday, till every detail of it was stamped on their brains and came through on the other side like the faces on a bad coinage. If only I had not accepted that invitation to dine at 27, Mrs. Darling said. If only I had not poured my medicine into Nana's bowl, said Mr. Darling. If only I had pretended to like the medicine, was what Nana's wet eyes said. My liking for parties, George. My fatal gift of humor, dearest. His fatal gift of humor, yeah, it was fatalistic. It sucks. He's got no gift for humor. Please, get over yourself, George. My touchiness about trifles, dear master and mistress. Then one or more of them would break down altogether. Nana at the thought. It's true. They ought not to have had a dog for a nurse. Many a time it was Mr. Darling who put the handkerchief to Nana's eyes. Oh, Nana, don't be feeling bad, because, Nana, you were trying to warn them, or you were probably going to be warning them, because There was something with you, Nana, and I know it's going to happen. And you know what? I don't think you have any part in this. So, Nana, don't you fret, little Nana. Once again, the singing Tourette's. That fiend, Mr. Darling would cry, and Nana's bark was the echo of it. But Mrs. Darling never upbraided Peter. There was something in the right-hand corner of her mouth that wanted her not to call Peter names. They would sit there in the empty nursery, recalling fondly every smallest detail of that dreadful evening. It had begun so uneventfully, so precisely like 100 other evenings, with Nana putting on the water for Michael's bath and carrying him to it on her back. "I won't go to bed," he had shouted, like one who still believed that he had the last word on the subject. I won't, Nana. It isn't 6 o'clock yet. Oh dear, I shan't love you any more, Nana. I tell you, I won't be bathed. I won't. Remember the years when you were little and you never wanted to take a bath? I always wanted to take a bath. I loved baths since I was a kid. My brother, Jordan, who was like 4 years old, my mom used to argue with him, "Jordan, take a bath. Maybe it's more of a guy thing. Yeah, and that's all Michael doesn't want to take it. Then Mrs. Darling had come in, wearing her white evening gown. She had dressed early because Wendy so loved to see her in her evening gown with the necklace George had given her. She was wearing Wendy's bracelet on her arm. She had asked for the loan of it. Wendy loved to lend her bracelet to her mother. She had found her 2 older children playing at being herself and father on the occasion of Wendy's birth, and John was saying, "I am happy to inform you, Mrs. Darling, that you are now a mother," in just such a tone as Mr. Darling himself may have used on the real occasion. Yet Mr. Darling would have said, "I don't know if we can keep these kids." Do we remember that in chapter 1? Because he didn't know if they had enough money. Do we remember that? How quickly they forget. Wendy had danced with joy, just as the real Mrs. Darling must have done. I believe that. Then John was born, with the extra pomp that he conceived due to the birth of a male, and Michael came from his bath to ask to be born also. But John said brutally that they did not want any more. Michael had nearly cried. "Nobody wants me," he said, and of course the lady in the evening dress could not stand that. "I do," she said. "I so want a 3rd child." "Boy or girl?" asked Michael, not too hopefully. "Boy." Then he leapt into her arms. Such a little thing for Mr. and Mrs. Darling and Nana to recall now, but not so little if that was to be Michael's last night in the nursery. They go on with their recollections. "It was then that I rushed in like a tornado, wasn't it?" Mr. Darling would say, scorning himself, and indeed he had been like a tornado. Perhaps there was some excuse for him. He too had been dressing for the party, and all had gone well with him until he came to his tie. It is an astounding thing to have to tell, but this man, though he knew about stocks and shares, had no real mastery of his tie. Sometimes the thing yielded to him without a contest, but there were other occasions when it would have been better for the house if he had swallowed his pride and used a made-up tie. This was such an occasion. He came rushing into the nursery with the crumpled little brute of a tie in his hand. "Why, what is the matter, father dear?" "Matter?" he yelled. He really yelled. "This tie, it will not tie." He became dangerously sarcastic. "Not round my neck, round the bedpost. Oh, yes, 20 times have I made it round the bedpost, but round my neck? No. Oh, dear, no. Begs to be excused." He thought Mrs. Darling was not sufficiently impressed, and he went on sternly, "I warn you of this, mother, that unless this tie is round my neck, we don't go out to dinner tonight. And if I don't go out to dinner tonight, I never go to the office again. And if I don't go to the office again, you and I starve, and our children will be flung into the streets." Talk about a drama queen. Really, Mr. Darling? All this because you are so inept and you cannot tie your frickin' tie? My God, the man's ego always has to be stroked. And now he needs his tie done and he just can't ask for help. He's got to put on such a show. Maybe we should sell tickets to Mr. Darling's tie show. Ugh, whatever. Please. Even then, Mrs. Darling was placid. "Let me try, dear," she said, and indeed, that was what he had come to ask her to do. And with the nice, cool hands, she tied his tie for him while the children stood around to see their fate decided. Some men would have resented her being able to do it so easily, but Mr. Darling had far too fine a nature for that. He thanked her carelessly, at once forgot his rage, and in another moment was dancing around the room with Michael on his back. See, Mrs. Darling is smart. She knows how to play Mr. Darling. That's why they fit together like two pieces in a puzzle, right? It's like they were meant for each other. She knows how to stroke and keep him happy. Okay. How wildly we romped, says Mr. Darling, now recalling it. Our last romp, Mr. Darling groaned. Oh, George, do you remember Michael suddenly said to me? How did you get to know me, Mother? I remember. Oh, they was rather sweet, don't you think, George? And they were ours, and now they are gone. The romp had ended with the appearance of Nana, and most unluckily Mr. Darling collided against her, covering his trousers with hairs. They were not only new trousers, but they were the first he had ever had with the braid on them, and he had to bite his lip to prevent the tears coming. There's the drama again. Always the friggin' drama because he's got dog hairs. This man needs some serious therapy, or he needs a Xanax. Of course, Mrs. Darling brushed him, but he began to talk again about its being a mistake to have a dog for a nurse. Once again, always blaming poor Nana, who's probably like the rock in this family. I'm for you, Nana. I love you, Nana. George, Nana is a treasure. No doubt, but I have an uneasy feeling at times that she looks upon the children as puppies. Oh, no, dear one. I feel sure she knows they have souls. So what is she saying with that? That puppies don't have souls? Hello, Nana's got a soul. Doggies have souls. That's what I want to believe. Yo, Mrs. Darling, I don't know about that. I wonder, Mr. Darling said thoughtfully. I wonder. It was an opportunity his wife felt for telling him about the boy. At first, he poo-pooed the story, but he became thoughtful when she showed him the shadow. It's nobody I know, he said, examining it carefully, but it does look a scoundrel. We were still discussing it, you remember, says Mr. Darling, when Nana came in with Michael's medicine. You will never carry the bottle in your mouth again, Nana, and it is all my fault. Ah, here we go. He's still owning up. That's good. Strong man though he was, there is no doubt that he had behaved rather foolishly over the medicine. If he had a weakness, it was for thinking that all his life he had taken medicine boldly. And so now, when Michael dodged the spoon in Nana's mouth, he had said reprovingly, "Be a man, Michael." Won't, Michael cried naughtily. Mrs. Darling left the room to get a chocolate for him, and Mr. Darling thought this showed want of firmness. Mother, don't pamper him, he recalled after her. Michael, when I was your age, I took medicine without a murmur. I said, "Thank you, kind parents, for giving me bottles to make me well." Well, if that ain't a load of crap, this man can't even tie his tie. You think he was going to take medicine so, like in an acquiescing manner? Bullshit. I call bullshit on that, Mr. Darling. He really thought this was true, and Wendy, who was now in a nightgown, believed it also, and she said, to encourage Michael, "That medicine you sometimes take, Father, is much nastier, isn't it?" "Ever so much nastier," Mr. Darling said bravely, "and I would take it now as an example to you, Michael, if I hadn't lost the bottle." He had not exactly lost it. He had climbed in the dead of the night to the top of the wardrobe and hidden it there. What he did not know was that the faithful Liza had found it and put it back on his washstand. "I know where it is, Father," Wendy cried, always glad to be of service. "I'll bring it." And she was off before he could stop her. Immediately, his spirits sank in the strangest way. Oh my God, he's getting called out. Look at this. Mind what you say. Okay, that's all I'm going to say, moms and dads out there. "John," he said, shuddering, "it's most beastly stuff. It's that nasty, sticky, sweet kind." "It will soon be over, Father," John said cheerily, and then in rushed Wendy with the medicine in a glass. "I have been as quick as I could," she panted. "You have been wonderfully quick," her father retorted, with a vindictive politeness that was quite thrown away upon her. "Michael first," he said, doggedly. "Father first," said Michael, who was of a suspicious nature. "I shall be sick, you know," Mr. Darling said threateningly. "Come on, Father," said John. "Hold your tongue, John," his father rapped out. Wendy was quite puzzled. "I thought you took it quite easily, Father." "That is not the point," he retorted. "The point is that there is more in my glass than in Michael's spoon." His proud heart was nearly bursting. "And it isn't fair. I would say it, though it were with my last breath. It isn't fair." Oh my God, is he acting like one of the kids? Do you believe this, man? It isn't fair. Just take the frickin' medicine and let your kid take his and be on with it, man. Father, I am waiting, said Michael coldly. It's all very well to say you are waiting. So am I waiting. Father's a cowardly custard. So are you, cowardly custard. I'm not frightened. Neither am I frightened. Well, then, take it. This is a grown man. Well, then, you take it. Wendy had a splendid idea. Why not both take it at the same time? Certainly, said Mr. Darling. Are you ready, Michael? Wendy gave the words. 1, 2, 3, and Michael took his medicine. But Mr. Darling slipped his behind his back. There was a yell of rage from Michael. And, oh, Father, Wendy exclaimed. What do you mean by, oh, Father, Mr. Darling demanded. Stop that row, Michael. I meant to take mine, but I missed it. It was dreadful, the way all the three were looking at him, just as if they did not admire him. Look here, all of you, he said entreatingly as soon as Nana had gone into the bathroom. I have just thought of a splendid joke. I shall pour my medicine into Nana's bowl, and she will drink it thinking it is milk. It was the color of milk, but the children did not have their father's sense of humor, and they looked at him reproachfully as he poured the medicine into Nana's bowl. What fun, he said doubtfully, and they did not dare expose him when Mrs. Darling and Nana returned. Nana, good dog, he said, patting her. I've put a little milk into your bowl, Nana. Nana wagged her tail, ran to the medicine, and began lapping it. Then she gave Mr. Darling such a look. Not an angry look. She showed him the great red tear that makes us so sorry for noble dogs and crept into her kennel. Mr. Darling was frightfully ashamed of himself, and you should be. How rude, how mean, how cruel. Poor Nana. If I were her, I would have shit on his leg or taken a nice whiz on his leg. But he would not give in. In a horrid silence, Mrs. Darling smelt the bowl. Oh, George, she said, it's your medicine. It was only a joke, he roared while she comforted her boys and Wendy hugged Nana. Much good, he said bitterly, my wearing myself to the bone trying to be funny in this house. And still Wendy hugged Nana. That's right, he shouted. Coddle her. Nobody coddles me. Oh, dear, no. I am only the breadwinner. Why should I be coddled? Why? George, Mrs. Darling entreated him. Not so loud. The servants will hear you. Somehow they had got into the way of calling Liza the servants. Let them, he answered recklessly. Bring in the whole world, but I refuse to allow that dog to lord it in my nursery for any longer. Ain't that a bitch? This guy's feeling guilty, and isn't that what happens when someone feels guilty? They turn it around and make it look like everybody else is the ones that are wrong, and it's so mean. It's just like that reverse psychology thing, to be like, oh, poor me, and like I'm the one, and all this stuff. No, you're a schmuck, George. You're a schmuck, and your last name, Darling, does not fit you right now. It fits Mrs. Darling, but it does not fit you. The children wept, and Nana ran to him beseechingly, but he waved her back. He felt he was a strong man again. In vain, he cried. The proper place for you is the yard. And there you go to be tied up this instant. George, Mrs. Darling whispered, remember what I told you about that boy. Alas, he would not listen. He was determined to show who was master in that house. And when commands would not draw Nana from the kennel, he lured her out of it with honeyed words, and seizing her roughly, dragged her from the nursery. He was ashamed of himself. And yet, he did it. It was all owing to his too affectionate nature, which craved for admiration. Once again, he wanted to be admired, and he did all this crap, and now it's even 10 times worse. When he had tied her up in the backyard, the wretched father went and sat in the passage with his knuckles to his eyes. In the meantime, Mrs. Darling had put the children to bed in unwonted silence and lit their night lights. They could hear Nana barking, and John whimpered. It is because he is chaining her up in the yard. But Wendy was wiser. That is not Nana's unhappy bark, she said, little guessing what was about to happen. That is her bark when she smells danger. Danger? Are you sure, Wendy? Oh, yes. Mrs. Darling quivered and went to the window. It was securely fastened, chalked out, and the night was peppered with stars. They were crowding round the house as if curious to see what was to take place there, but she did not notice this, nor that one or two of the smaller ones winked at her. Yet a nameless fear clutched at her heart and made her cry, "Oh, how I wish that I wasn't going to a party tonight." Even Michael, already half asleep, knew that she was perturbed, and he asked, "Can anything harm us, Mother, after the night lights are lit?" "Nothing, precious," she said. "They are the eyes a mother leaves behind her to guard her children." Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. I love Mrs. Darling, I'm not going to lie. She went from bed to bed singing enchantments over them, and little Michael flung his arms around her. "Mother," he cried, "I'm glad of you." They were the last words she was to hear from him for a long time. Number 27 was only a few yards distant, but there had been a slight fall of snow, and Father and Mother Darling picked their way over it deftly, not to soil their shoes. They were already the only persons in the street, and all the stars were watching them. Stars are beautiful, but they may not take an active part in anything. They must just look on forever. It is a punishment put on them for something they did so long ago that no star now knows what it was. So the older ones have become glassy-eyed and seldom speak. Winking is the star language, but the little ones still wonder. They are not really friendly to Peter, who had a mischievous way of stealing up behind them and trying to blow them out. But they are so fond of fun, and they were on his side tonight and anxious to get the grown-ups out of the way. So, as soon as the door of 27 closed on Mr. and Mrs. Darling, there was a commotion in the firmament, and the smallest of all the stars in the Milky Way screamed out, "Now, Peter!" Whoa! Whoa. Like, whoa. I feel like mind blown. All right. First of all, Mr. Darling, I mean, secretly, I get it. He's a nice person, and I really don't want to keep saying nasty things about Mr. Darling. But Mr. Darling has got to stop, and I think he's going to learn a lesson soon. And he is owning some responsibility, probably 99% of that responsibility for what is happening here. Poor Nana, poor Nana, poor Nana. But I know Nana's going to be vindicated. And Mrs. Darling, she is such a darling. What is going on now with the medicine and all this? It's like, take a day of medicine. And this is where now I want to just get into the woo-woo of it all. All right, now, the thing is this in life, my friends. Sometimes we say things, and then we're getting called on action to like take action on what we just said. And then if you cannot take action on that, then don't say it. So this to me is a lesson in walking the walk, not just talking the talk. You know, Mr. Darling said, "I take the medicine, blah, blah, blah," and then he lied and whatever. But the point is this, when it came to action, instead of him being just an adult or just a person that respected himself, he just should have taken it and been like, whatever. I mean, he's a grown man. And that's the same thing in your life. It's like, where have you been in a situation where you've said something, but yet you could not back up those words because you knew that you were not going to act on it, but you just said it to say it because you thought the other person wanted to hear it or it made you look good. Or let's flip this shit around. What happened if someone's done that to you, and then when you called them out on it, they couldn't provide for you whatever they promised, and that disappointed you. So this isn't a guilt thing. We've all done something where our actions don't always back up our words. But I think it's really important from this particular section to notice when you are saying things that, you know, you truly cannot fulfill the action. I think it's important to tell somebody, "I'm sorry, I don't agree with you, or I can't fulfill that request that you have of me. It's not going to happen." And just speak your truth with light and love and authenticity. Or if someone has done that to you and you know, like they say, once bitten, twice shy, they've done it a couple of times, then you know that they're really not of their word. And I also think it's important. Now, I know no kids are watching this, so adults are watching this, hopefully, besides myself. I don't really watch it when I'm done, but I'm here. Point is this. Adults, I don't have children, but 90% of what children learn are from what they see in the house. It's not from what you tell them. So it's like, do as I say, not as I do. Children are perceiving everything. They're just small people. They're very smart. You know that saying, out of the mouths of babes? They know shit. And they see it all. So I think it's really important. I mean, I'm an auntie. They're all grown up now. But I do think it's important that when you're a parent, a teacher, or someone who's a mentor, that whatever you're saying whatever you're saying is actually backed up by your actions, and being really aware of what you do in front of people, especially children, because that says a lot about who you are. And at the end of the day, you first have to have self-respect, and the only way you really can get respect from others is when you do respectful things for yourself, which is walk the walk, which with of backing up the talk. So I think it's very important to mean what you say what you mean, and just be authentic about it. And don't make false promises, and don't say things that are outward lies. I mean, let's be honest. No one likes anybody who's a liar, okay? And I'm not talking about white little lies, okay, people? I'm talking about, when you're saying something really that is a farce, and you're like, oh God, I hope I never get called out on it. Guess what? You're going to be called out on it. So don't do that, okay? The another thing I want to say is, you don't know what you got until it's gone. They do love their children. And I think with all of them, they know that their children are special, and that, everybody should love your child. You should love your children, and you should love each other. And I think this is a good case of sometimes we get in tiffs with people, right? We get into an argument, and then we go to bed angry, and then the next day we try to make amends, or maybe we don't. But where are those times in your life that you had a tiff with someone that you genuinely wanted to have a friendship with, or their family member, and it took you a long time to come forward and apologize and what have you and rectify the situation? Now, this is where, God forbid, something happens to them. You don't get that opportunity. So what I'm going to encourage you to do, this is a big challenge, my friends, is there somebody that you've been wanting to talk to that you haven't spoken to in years, and maybe even a few days, and you want to tell them, I'm sorry, or let's talk, blah, 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 bluey. This is someone you want in your life. I'm going to encourage you to do that. Contact them, because I'm sure they would love to hear from you. I think it's really important to tell people we love them and that we cherish them and appreciate them, because we don't know if we are going to see them another day. And that's for all of us. So I think it's very important to treat each other with kindness. Not to say that people do not irritate us and piss us off. This is life. We're human. But I think after an argument or a disagreement, it's best to be like, I think we're both getting heated on this. Let's end the conversation. Let's know that we both need to cool down, and let's talk about this another time. But I don't want to end this conversation angrily. And I think that's really important. I think that's a challenge for all of us, including myself. I think it's very important to always be kind to people, but especially if we're having a disagreement with them. And Mr. Darling had a disagreement with his children, especially Michael, and now he really regrets it. We don't want to have a life of regret. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, you know what? We're human, and we're going to make mistakes. Please, people, it's not about that. It's just that how can we be more conscious and be more loving and more kind, first to ourselves and then to others? Because the more that we're kind to ourselves, then all this kindness pours out and it goes out to others. So I think it's important that when you're upset with someone or someone's upset with you, you guys talk it out. Now, listen, if there are friendships or relationships you no longer need to delve with, and maybe you had harsh words with that person, you're like, I don't ever need to see that person again. I get it. You don't need to reach out to them unless you feel really badly and the last thing you said to them was something really hurtful. Then I would encourage you, this is really a challenge, to just apologize to them, take responsibility and own it, and take accountability, and just let them know, I just wanted to leave you with this, and I'm very sorry for what happened the last time, but I wish you well. Because let me tell you something, friends. We don't want to have regrets about the things we didn't do and the things we didn't say. Life is too short, especially, we all know this right here, right now. Whoa, that's a lot of woo-woo going on. So I think about the shadow. I haven't even begun to talk about shadow. Maybe we'll talk about it in the next chapter. But anyway, that's a lot to digest, you know what I'm saying? Like the bad medicine, but maybe not bad medicine. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this chapter. Hope I've given you a lot of things to think about. Maybe if you're journaling, journal. But just think about the challenges. And you know what? Challenge yourself, my friends. We are here to develop and grow and evolve each and every day. And these are just opportunities for growth. But remember, while you're doing these wonderful opportunities for growth, always give yourself kindness and self-love and care. It's most important that you love yourself so much, because that love you feel for yourself totally emits. It's an energy, it's a vibration, and everyone will feel it. And then that's what you're going to emit to the world, is love. All right, my friends. Hope you are beautiful, staying safe, staying healthy, staying sane, and knowing that, you know what? I will see you soon, and just have a grand day. Bye now. Happy and peppy and bursting with love. Bum, bum, bum. Oh my God. That is a song from an old Odd Couple. Did I ever sing that for my other episodes? I don't know, but I used to love the show Odd Couple with Tony Randall and Jack Klugman, Felix and Oscar. Loved that show. All right, enough of me. Time to move on. Bye-bye. Fly away.